Welcome back, guys. Today I am going to go over switching a standard stable Debian install over to testing. Now, the reason I did that is because the reason I'm interested in doing that, and you might be, is because if you are running Debian stable, of course, your package selection is somewhat restricted, and it makes it sometimes a little bit more difficult to get some of your audio or your multimedia services running. And so I have found that most of my multimedia works much better when I'm running testing. Now, there are a few distributions that run Debian testing, and I have tried them, and I actually like them. But there are some distributions that I really like that run Debian stable, and so I wanted to see what would happen, and I wanted to determine the safest way to change a Debian stable distribution over to Debian testing. Now, if you do a search, Linux distributions, Debian testing, you should get a distro watch. Yeah. So in distro watch, basically it sets up your search for you. And I'll go through some of the distributions that run Debian testing. Now, Kali Linux, I tried it, but it's more for security and forensics. So it's got a lot of applications that the standard user does not need. And then you have to go through the trouble of deleting them or uninstalling them through Synaptic. So while it is a nice distribution, I don't use it for that reason. Sparky Linux I really like, and I have installed it, and I've had really good luck with it. So that one there I can recommend. Makulu, not so much. I had some issues with Makulu, and I believe Makulu switched over to Ubuntu, if I'm not straight Ubuntu, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, and then you have, and those are the only ones that I've tried on that list. And then if you want to go all the way to unstable, you get into things like Seduction. I have tried Seduction, and I think it's one of the best Debian distributions out there. But it's running unstable, which sometimes that can cause a few problems. I have not had any problems with Seduction. I've done a few reviews on Seduction. I haven't had any crashing issues or any packages break suddenly. So I can recommend Seduction. And it's not a well-known distribution, but it's very, very nice. Matter of fact, I'm on my main computer right now, and I do have Seduction running on this computer, and I have Seduction running on my secondary computer, which is on the second floor of the house. So Seduction I can recommend. But as I mentioned, I wanted to take a distribution running Debian stable and switch it to Debian testing. So if I take a look at Debian stable distributions, Q4 OS is nice. It's a little bit, the look and the feel is more of a Windows. I've done a review on it. I like it. It's really nice. Robo Linux, I think, is good. However, they get a little bit away from the Linux open, and they, I totally understand capitalism, and I totally understand trying to make profit, but they're basically charging for you to use their proprietary mechanism to run Windows in a virtual box, which you can do for nothing. And so I realize they do make it easier, but I don't like the idea of the mandatory charges. I think Linux should be, I do believe in contributing, but I think it should be voluntary, because this is supposed to be a free and open source community for Linux. And so they need money to survive, but I believe it should be done on a voluntary basis. That's just my opinion. Okay, now Voyager is wonderful. As a matter of fact, I just downloaded their Debian version. They have a Ubuntu versions and a Debian version. I just downloaded it, and I'm going to be installing it. I'll probably do a review on that within a week or so. Solid X and K, I like Solid X. I'm not a big KDE fan, but Solid X is extremely nice. Parsix I have used. I did not have a good experience with it, although it's not bad, but I wouldn't rank it up as high as let's say Voyager plain Debian, which you can install in any version you want basically, and the one that I have installed here is one of my favorite Debian distributions of all time, and that is Point Linux. Now, Point Linux runs Debian stable. It is developed in Russia, which is a little unusual. They have only the Mate and XFCE desktops, but that covers a lot of ground. They do a really nice job basically giving you a plain vanilla Mate and XFCE experience. Very, very nicely done. And let's see, their website, very nice. I like the look and feel, and I'm going to get to the specifics on that. But as you can see from the screenshots, it is basically, I like to refer to it as, it has kind of the Linux Lite look, except it's Debian. Now, if you're going to install it, I would install the 3.0. And I believe they just had an update recently, but let's talk a little bit about Point Linux. Now, I installed it last night, and it takes me a while to, the install is very quick. Now, I can give you some advice on the download. When you download, as I said, pick the 3.0 stable and then select your version. I selected the Mate. Now, I would recommend you go with the full-featured desktop, because the desktop with core components only is what I installed, so that I could install everything myself. One of the problems is that if you look at my Wi-Fi, I was able to install my Broadcom using my normal Debian installation process, and that was perfect. So I have Wi-Fi. But I have a secondary USB Wi-Fi dongle that I use, which normally is recognized by almost every Linux distribution. So that gives me Wi-Fi before I get my Broadcom internal Wi-Fi card configured, because you need Wi-Fi for the install in most cases. So as you can see, it recognizes the device, but it says not ready, firmware missing. And so I think that's because I installed the core components only. And so I would recommend to you that you do not go that route. Install the full-featured desktop. Then select your 32 or 64, direct or torrent. Now you can select your mirror. I selected the Russian Federation, Moscow, only because it was closer to the source. And lately I've discovered that closer to the source usually is faster. Kind of strange, but that's what I did. But you can select any server you like, and then you can select whether you want to donate. It's not automatic, so if you don't want to donate anything until after you try it, then click on Do Not Donate Anything and then Download Now. Now, as I said, I recommend the full versus the core. So let's talk. So that's why my Wi-Fi, my secondary USB Wi-Fi dongle, shows that it's there, but it's not configured because of missing firmware. Now, I haven't made an issue of trying to find the firmware because my Broadcom is working fine. Okay, so this is a wallpaper that I downloaded from the internet. So it's not the out-of-the-box wallpaper, but it looks very nice. So that's why that's there. Now, as I said, this is the Mate version. It does not have the Mate expanded menu. It has applications, places, and system, which is actually what I prefer. Now the core version comes with bare bones software. It doesn't even have a browser. So I went ahead, once I installed it, I went ahead and installed all of the applications that I use. This enabled me to keep it minimum so that I'm not installing anything that I don't plan on using. In that respect, the core version has an advantage. Okay, so going from stable to testing, this is the system or the process that I recommend. Go to administration and pull up Synaptic. Now the first thing you're going to do when you finish your install, if you plan on switching from stable to testing, do not run an upgrade. Just do the install and leave it alone. Only install what you need to be able to, like, you want to have internet working, and so just install what you need, and then go into, don't run apt-get update, don't run apt-get upgrade. Go into your Synaptic, and then once you're in Synaptic, pull up your repositories. It's under settings and then repositories, and I usually expand the window so I can get a better understanding of what's there. So basically, Google Chrome is there in order to update Google Chrome. I'm not touching that at all. That's staying unstable. The Point Linux repo, which is under AGNI, I'm not touching that either because that's the proprietary repo. I don't want to touch that. The Steam repo, because I have Steam installed, I'm not touching Steam. Now none of this will be there when you go in. Okay, it's only going to have the Debian distros and the Agni distro. So leave the Agni alone. But when you go into your repositories, you're going to see that these here, the Debian, but they're going to say Jesse. Okay? You want to change, every time you see Jesse, you want to change to stretch. Or you can put testing. right now stretch is testing, but at some point stretch is going to become stable. So if you don't want to change your repositories later, you might be better off going with testing versus stretch. So let me show you. I put stretch, and these three are the only ones I need to change. They did say Jesse before I changed them. Down here, the multimedia, I added that in. That automatically is testing when you pull in the information for Deb Multimedia. So those there I'm not going to change. But let's change stretch to testing. When you click on it, it opens up the information at the bottom. Don't touch the first line and don't touch the third line. You want to just touch the distribution. And I'm going to change it to testing. That way, when stretch becomes stable, I will continue to pull in the testing repos. Okay, then click on the next one that you want to change. Don't take the updates out. Just change. You'll be changing Jesse to testing. And then go to the third and leave it just the way it is configured, but just change Jesse to testing. I'm changing stretch because I had already changed Jesse to stretch. Okay, so I'm going to click on OK and reload. It'll go through basically apt-get update. Once it finishes, since you'll be dealing with a new install, once the repos update, then I would go through the upgrade process. And what you're going to do is you're going to click mark all upgrades. And there are enough. My system is up to date. So there's nothing to apply. Now, just to test out the system, I wanted to make sure I could pull in everything that I usually use. You can see up in the system tray in the top right, I have caffeine, which I can activate or deactivate, P-sensor, redshift, clip it, I've got my sound, I've got Wi-Fi, and I've got my clock. Now, and of course you've got your restart, shutdown, suspend. For applications, as I said, since I installed the core, it was bare bones. So I've got under accessories, caffeine, cherry tree, clip it, and grandpa comes included. Some of these come included, but right now this is what I have. Calculator, Mate search tool. I use N1 for email because I read that Geary is no longer going to be supported, so I switched over to N1 and I really like it. I downloaded Plank, but I'm not using it yet. I have Pluma text editor comes with it. I normally install LeafPad, and I'll end up doing that. Here's Redshift and Screenshot. Games, I only have Play on Linux and Steam, but you can see that I have Hearthstone installed through Play on Linux, and I have Steam up and running. For graphics, I installed XNView. Everything else came with it. Internet, I installed ICE so that I could get Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime as SSBs. And as you can see, when I click on it, it brings up a dedicated browser window for Amazon Prime. Does the same thing. Now, Hulu is very difficult to configure for an SSB. And that's a whole other video, but briefly I'll tell you that I installed a repo so that I could pull in Firefox. I pulled it in from an Ubuntu repo, which is a no-no. If you ask the Debian people about it, they're going to say, oh my God, the gods of Debian will strike you down. But it's basically the only way to get Firefox. And so I enabled the repo, pulled in Firefox, and then I disabled and deleted the repo. The same thing with ICE. I wanted to get the newest version of ICE, and so I pulled it in from an Ubuntu repo, and then I deleted the repo. The reason I wanted the newest version of ICE is because the newest version of ICE contains Firefox. The older version of ICE only has Chrome and Chromium. I wanted Firefox so that I could get Hulu working. And so I wanted the newest version of ICE, so I installed added a repo for Ubuntu to pull in the latest ICE version, and then I deleted the repo. Shame on me. Okay, so you can see I have Amazon Prime, I have Hulu, and I have Netflix. Now, for Office, I installed WPS, which I better than LibreOffice. Now these pull in when you have Chrome installed. These are basically Chrome apps. And then for programming, Nihilus1 or the N1 email for some reason shows up in the programming. I can go into the menus and change that around, but I haven't done that yet. For sound and video, I installed Banshee. Now, I'll get back to OBS. OpenShot, Pythos, SM Player, and VLC. I installed those. Let me come back to OBS. System tools, you've got the usual. I didn't really, other than pSensor, I didn't really install anything there. Pulls up all places. Removable media, you can see that other partitions where I have other distributions running, because I label them in gparted, they show up with the label. And then system, you've got preferences, administration, I added gparted. My NVIDIA drivers, I use the standard Debian install procedure, and so I'm only running 340.96, but that is fine for me. This system runs fine with 340, so I'm not going to muck up the system with problems related to trying to upgrade. I could have used another process to get the latest and greatest, but I've run into a few problems with that on occasion, and so I wanted to leave this as stable as possible, and so I have the 340.96. That is the latest stable NVIDIA driver that you can get through Debian. So we will close that out. Pretty much everything else came with it, and then of course you've got your normal Mate control center. NVIDIA's there, synaptic, gparted. Let's see, power management, I configured that. Sound was fine right out of the box. Sometimes you have to go into ALSA Mixer when you do an install to enable the channels that you're using for sound. But in this case, everything worked fine. Now appearance, I did install a few different themes, mainly Vertex. I'm running Vertex Dark, and I'm running the Vertex Dark colors, window border, icons. I'm running Point Linux Fienza Dark. I happen to like Fienza. They already have a version of Point Linux Fienza Dark. That's what I'm running. So trying to keep it as simple as possible, but I do like a dark theme. Another thing I like about the Mate desktop is Windows you can set to open in the center now, and I like that. Now with XFCE you kind of set a slider, and sometimes they open in the center, sometimes they don't, but this is pretty reliable as far as opening in the center. Now for file management, let's see, you can single click, double click. It's all the usual configuration options. And of course for startup, I added caffeine, clip it. I've got everything that I need. Now I also have Compton running for compositing to get rid of screen tearing, and I prefer Compton over the screen tearing that's installed for Mate out of the box. I'm not sure what they're using, but I have my own Compton configuration file that works fine for what I'm doing. And let's see, I think that is about it. Now I haven't set up my preferred applications yet. I do have Google Chrome and Nihilus, because when I went into Google Chrome I clicked it as default. Nihilus is the only mail program I have. For multimedia, let's see, I'm going to take XNView. I'm going to take Banshee for music, and I'm going to take SM Player for videos. For system, text editor is Pluma, Mate Terminal, file manager is Kaja or Kaha. For word processing, WPS Writer. For spreadsheet, WPS Spreadsheets. And that is it. So as you can see, everything runs fine. Now let me get back to OBS. I did a video on compiling OBS Studio for Debian, and that's how I have OBS running. You see OBS is there and OBS is running. I prefer OBS for screencasting. Lately it's all I use, and I really enjoy it. So guys, once you change your repositories from stable to testing, then you do your update. From then on, your updates will pull in the updates from the Debian testing repos, and therefore you'll get a little bit later versions of your software, and you'll have access to some software that you don't currently, or you wouldn't currently have access to with Debian stable. So guys, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's not always clear how to make the move from Debian stable, and I used Point Linux as an example, but you can use any stable Debian distribution to try this. Now I would recommend that you do it on a secondary partition until you have everything working, because this may be something you're trying for the first time, and you certainly don't want to put your data in jeopardy. So guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Take care.